Welcome to my channel. Try to hear the latest story.
I was standing in my empty living room, staring at 7 years' worth of unopened birthday gifts that had been returned to sender while holding my phone showing 847 unanswered calls to my parents, siblings, aunts, uncles, and cousins. The devastating realization hit me like a freight train that this wasn't neglect or busy lives. This was a coordinated, intentional campaign to erase me from the family that raised me. The question that haunted me as I looked at those returned packages was simple, but crushing. What did I do to deserve complete banishment from the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally? Looking back, the silence began exactly 7 years, 3 months, and 12 days ago. I remember the date because it was 2 weeks after I graduated from the University of Colorado with a business degree, and 3 days after I landed my first corporate job at a financial planning firm in Denver. I was 25 years old, fresh out of college, and absolutely thriving with excitement about my future. My family owned Romano's Italian Kitchen, a restaurant that had been struggling for decades. The red vinyl booths were cracked, the kitchen equipment constantly broke down, and the books showed nothing but red ink month after month. My father, Vincent Romano, had inherited the place from his father, who had inherited it from his father before that. 3 generations of barely scraping by, constantly borrowing money, and watching dreams crumble one unpaid bill at a time. The night everything changed, my parents called me over for dinner. I thought they wanted to celebrate my new job. Instead, my father slammed a stack of financial documents on the scratched wooden table and declared that I needed to quit my position immediately and come work at the restaurant full-time. "Leonard, this family business is your responsibility now," he said, his voice carrying that tone of absolute authority I remembered from childhood. "Your grandfather built this place with his bare hands. Your mother and I have sacrificed everything to keep it running. Now it's your turn to step up and save the family legacy." I tried to explain that I had dreams of my own, that I wanted to build a career in finance, that maybe I could help them develop a business plan to turn things around while keeping my job. My mother, Patricia, started crying immediately. "After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us, by abandoning your family when we need you most." The argument escalated quickly. My father's face turned red as he shouted about ungrateful children and family loyalty. My older brother, Marcus, sat silent in the corner, having already given up his own dreams to work at the restaurant for the past 8 years. My younger sister, Emma, who was only 16 at the time, watched with wide, frightened eyes as the family imploded around the dinner table. When I finally said I wouldn't give up my career to work at a failing restaurant, my father stood up, pointed at the front door, and spoke words that would echo in my mind for years. "Then you're dead to this family. Don't come back until you're ready to honor your obligations." I thought he was just angry. I thought he'd cool down in a few days and we'd work things out like families do. I was completely wrong. The first month I called every other day. The calls went straight to voicemail, which was always full. I sent text messages that showed as delivered but never received responses. I drove to the restaurant twice, but the staff told me my parents weren't available and suggested I call ahead next time. By month 3, I started sending letters. Long handwritten notes explaining my perspective, apologizing for the argument, asking if we could sit down and talk things through. Every letter came back marked "Return to sender" in my mother's distinctive handwriting. Christmas of that first year, I bought thoughtful presents for everyone. A leather cookbook for my mother, who loved trying new recipes. A vintage beer bottle opener for my father's collection. A college preparation book for Emma. A new chef's knife set for Marcus. I wrapped each gift carefully, included heartfelt cards, and had them delivered to the restaurant. 3 weeks later, all the packages appeared on my doorstep, unopened with "refused" stamped across the shipping labels. Year 2 brought my promotion to senior financial analyst and my decision to pursue an MBA program at night. I sent graduation announcements, promotion letters, and updates about my life, thinking they'd be proud of my success. Everything came back returned. I tried reaching out through extended family members. Cousin Sarah told me my parents were going through a difficult time and suggested I give them space. Uncle Tony said he didn't want to get involved in family drama. Aunt Carol stopped returning my calls altogether. Year 3 was when I discovered social media stalking. I created fake accounts to check on my family's Facebook and Instagram profiles. They posted constantly about family gatherings, holiday celebrations, and restaurant events. Photos showed everyone laughing and enjoying life together as if I had never existed at all. No empty chair at the table. No references to a missing family member. Just complete erasure. I graduated with my MBA in year 4. The ceremony felt hollow without family there to celebrate. I took a photo of myself in my cap and gown and mailed copies to everyone along with a letter explaining how much their absence hurt and how desperately I wanted to rebuild our relationship. Once again, everything returned unopened. Year 5 brought a major promotion to regional manager and my decision to buy a house. I sent photos of my new place keys to the front door and invitations for anyone who wanted to visit. The package came back with "Deceased, return to sender" written across it in my father's handwriting. That notation shook me to my core. Were they telling people I was dead? Was that how they explained my absence from family events? The possibility seemed too cruel to believe, but the evidence kept mounting. Year 6 was the breaking point. I hired a grief counselor because I felt like I was mourning people who were still alive. The therapist helped me understand that I was experiencing a form of psychological death, a deliberate cutting off that was designed to make me question my own worth and sanity. But it wasn't until early year 7 that I discovered the truth accidentally. I was cleaning out my email spam folder when I noticed a message from my cousin Sarah with the subject line, "Romano Family Reunion Planning Committee." She had accidentally included my old college email address on a group message. My hands shook as I read through the thread. Discussions about catering venue booking and family photo arrangements, casual mentions of "since we lost Leonard," and "it'll be our first reunion without him," and most devastating of all, "Mom wants to do a memorial toast for Leonard like we did at Christmas." Memorial toast, they were actually telling people I was dead. I scrolled through weeks of planning emails that painted a picture of a thriving, close-knit family preparing to celebrate their bonds. No one questioned my absence. No one suggested reaching out to me. I had been erased so completely that planning a family reunion without me seemed perfectly natural to everyone involved. The final email in the thread was from my mother, sent to the entire extended family with photos attached from previous reunions. The caption read, "Looking forward to seeing everyone next month. We'll make sure to honor Leonard's memory during our blessing before dinner. Even though he's no longer with us, his spirit will always be part of our family gatherings." I stared at that message for hours, reading it over and over, trying to process the level of calculated cruelty it represented. They hadn't just cut me off. They had created an elaborate fiction about my death and were performing grief for sympathy while actively choosing to maintain the lie. 7 years of returned gifts, 7 years of ignored calls, 7 years of systematic erasure. And now I understood it was never about anger or disappointment. It was about control, manipulation, and a twisted form of punishment designed to break me completely. But instead of breaking me, that email thread ignited something I hadn't felt in years, pure focused rage. The morning after discovering those emails, I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years and sat in my home office researching private investigators in Denver. I needed to know exactly what my family had been doing while pretending I was dead. And I needed evidence that would hold up in court if necessary. Marcus Hoffman came highly recommended by online reviews and specialized in family fraud cases. His office was located in a modest building downtown, and he had the weathered look of someone who had seen every type of human betrayal imaginable. When I explained my situation, he didn't seem surprised. or shocked. Apparently, families weaponizing fake deaths for sympathy and financial gain was more common than I had realized. "Give me 3 weeks," Marcus said, taking detailed notes about my family members, their businesses, and the timeline of my banishment. "I'll get you a complete picture of their activities, finances, and any legal vulnerabilities they might have exposed themselves to." 3 weeks felt like 3 months, but Marcus delivered exactly what he promised. We met at a coffee shop near his office, and he spread out a thick folder of documents that would change everything I thought I knew about my family's situation. "Leonard, your parents' restaurant didn't fail," Marcus said, pulling out financial records. "In fact, Romano's Italian Kitchen has expanded to 3 locations over the past 7 years. They now employ 42 people and generate approximately $2.7 million in annual revenue." I stared at the bank statements and tax documents, trying to process what I was seeing. The family business that was supposedly hemorrhaging money when I graduated college was now a thriving enterprise with locations in Denver, Boulder, and Colorado Springs. "How is that possible?" I asked. "They were broke 7 years ago. They could barely pay rent on the original location." Marcus pulled out another set of documents. "That's where it gets interesting. According to these loan applications, your parents secured their expansion funding by listing you as a silent partner and investment consultant who lives overseas. They've been using your college transcripts, your MBA, your credit history, and your early career success as collateral for business loans. The paperwork showed loan applications dating back 6 years each one, featuring detailed descriptions of my educational background and professional achievements. In the applications, I was described as Leonard Romano, MBA, currently managing international business development from our European offices. The fictional narrative painted me as a brilliant business mind who was providing strategic guidance and financial backing from abroad. "They forged my signature on these documents?" I said, recognizing the clumsy attempts to replicate my handwriting. "It gets worse," Marcus continued. "Your father has been attending networking events and business conferences, introducing himself as the owner of a family restaurant empire, with a son who's a financial genius working in international markets. He's collected business cards from dozens of potential investors and partners by selling this story." I felt sick to my stomach as Marcus showed me photos from business events where my father was shaking hands with investors, apparently pitching business opportunities, while claiming I was the financial brains behind the operation. "But how do they explain my absence if they're telling people I'm their business partner?" I asked. Marcus pulled out printed social media posts and local newspaper clippings. "They've created 2 completely different narratives for 2 different audiences. To the extended family and local community, you died in a car accident in Switzerland 3 years ago. But to business contacts and potential investors, you're alive and thriving as their international consultant." The newspaper clipping was from the local community newsletter, featuring a story about Romano's Italian Kitchen donating food to a charity drive. The article mentioned that the restaurant was honoring the memory of Vincent and Patricia's late son Leonard, who tragically passed away while traveling in Europe. "They took out life insurance policies on you," Marcus said, handing me copies of insurance documents. 3 different policies totaling $450,000, all claiming you died in a fictional car accident in Geneva. They've already collected on one policy that apparently didn't require as much documentation. My hands were shaking as I flipped through the insurance paperwork. Detailed death certificates supposedly issued by Swiss authorities, with official-looking stamps and signatures. Police reports describing a fatal collision on a mountain road outside Geneva. Medical examiner reports confirming my death from traumatic injuries. "These are completely fabricated," I said. "Professional quality forgeries," Marcus agreed. "They must have paid serious money to have these created. And here's the really disturbing part: they've installed an actual grave marker with your name and fake death date at Riverside Cemetery." Marcus showed me photographs of a modest granite headstone engraved with Leonard Vincent Romano, beloved son, and brother, born March 15, 1992, died September the 23rd, 2022, forever in our hearts. Fresh flowers had been placed in front of the stone, suggesting my parents were maintaining the gravesite for appearances. Iti Kiwasel, they're collecting sympathy donations from the community for their tragic loss, while simultaneously collecting business investments based on your supposed success, Marcus explained. It's an incredibly sophisticated fraud scheme that's been generating income from multiple angles for years. The final piece of evidence was the most devastating bank records showing that my parents had been monitoring my actual credit report and financial activities throughout the entire 7 years of silence. They knew about my promotions, my salary, increases my mortgage approval, and my investment account growth. They had been tracking my real success while performing grief over my fake death. They've been watching you this whole time, Marcus said. They know exactly how well you're doing, which makes their decision to maintain the fraud even more calculated. I sat in that coffee shop for 2 hours, staring at evidence of the most elaborate betrayal I could have imagined. My family hadn't just cut me off emotionally. They had created an entire fictional universe where I existed as either a dead son to be mourned or a successful business partner to be exploited, depending on which story served their needs at any given moment. The worst part was realizing that other family members had to be complicit. My brother Marcus was listed as a co-owner of the restaurant expansion. My cousin Sarah had helped plan memorial services in my honor. Extended family members had donated money to support the Romano family during their time of grief. Everyone knew, everyone was participating, and everyone was benefiting financially from my erasure. What are my legal options? I asked Marcus. Identity theft insurance, fraud, defamation, and conspiracy, he replied. We're talking about federal crimes with serious prison time. But Leonard, before you decide how to proceed, there's something else you need to know. Marcus pulled out one final document, a printout of planning notes, apparently written by my mother. The handwritten list included items like expand insurance claims to include Emma by age 25, and research international business fraud opportunities and maintain Leonard narrative for minimum 10 years. They're planning to fake your sister's death too, Marcus said quietly, and they're treating your identity theft as a long-term business model. I walked out of that coffee shop knowing that my family wasn't just cruel or dysfunctional. They were career criminals who had turned destroying their own children into a profitable enterprise. And I was about to become their worst nightmare. The weekend after meeting with Marcus, I sat in my kitchen with a legal pad, methodically planning my complete disappearance from Leonard Romano's life. If my family wanted me dead, I would give them exactly what they asked for. But first, I was going to extract everything they had stolen from me and make sure they could never hurt anyone else the same way. My first call was to Rebecca Walsh, an attorney who specialized in identity theft cases. Her office was in a gleaming downtown high-rise, and she had the sharp, focused demeanor of someone who had spent years prosecuting complex white-collar crimes. The evidence you've gathered is overwhelming, Rebecca said after reviewing Marcus's files. Your parents are looking at 15 to 20 years in federal prison if convicted on all counts. But prosecution will take months or even years, during which time they'll likely try to destroy evidence and potentially flee the country. What if I don't want to prosecute immediately? I asked. What if I want to disappear first and deal with them later? Rebecca leaned back in her chair, considering the implications. You could legally change your name, relocate, and build a new life while we prepare an airtight case. It would actually give us more time to investigate their full criminal network and potentially uncover additional victims. That afternoon, I filed paperwork to legally change my name to Thomas Mitchell Carter. Thomas had been my grandfather's middle name on my mother's side before the Romano family had rejected my father for being too traditional. Mitchell was my college roommate's last name, and Carter was completely random chosen because it felt strong and independent. Over the next 6 weeks, I systematically dismantled Leonard Romano's existence. I sold my house to a cash buyer who could close quickly. I liquidated my investment accounts, transferred the money to banks in Portland, Oregon, and closed all my local accounts. I terminated my lease on my car, bought a used Honda Civic with cash, and registered it under my new name. The hardest part was resigning from my job without explanation. I had spent 7 years building a career and professional reputation, but staying would have meant remaining connected to Leonard Romano's identity. My boss, David Chen, was confused and concerned when I gave 2 weeks' notice without providing details about my next opportunity. "Leonard, you're one of our top performers," David said during my exit interview. "Are you sure there's nothing we can do to address whatever's driving this decision?" I wanted to explain everything, but doing so would have compromised my plan. "I need to make a fresh start somewhere else," I said. "I appreciate everything this company has taught me, but it's time for a new chapter." My colleagues threw a goodbye party that felt like attending my own wake. People who had worked closely with me for years gave speeches about my contributions and wished me well in my mysterious new adventure. I smiled and accepted their well wishes, while internally saying goodbye to the professional identity I had worked so hard to build. The final week before my planned departure, I was clearing out my social media accounts when I noticed something strange in my sister Emma's Instagram posts. Her captions had always been brief and cheerful, but looking at the past 2 years of posts, I started noticing a pattern. Her caption from Christmas read, "Hope everyone enjoys the holiday season." Her New Year's post said, "Excited for what this year will bring." Her birthday post in March said, "Life is full of surprises and new beginnings." Her graduation post in May said, "Proud to finish this chapter and start the next." Her summer vacation post said, "Maybe someday I'll find my own path." Her back-to-school post said, "Every day brings new challenges to overcome." Reading just the first letter of each caption created a hidden message, HELCPMEFINDYOU. My heart stopped as I realized Emma had been trying to communicate with me through coded social media posts for over 2 years. I scrolled back further through her timeline, finding more hidden messages. "They watch everything I do and can't leave house alone and miss my brother so much." Emma's photos showed her looking increasingly thin and isolated over time. Her smile looked forced in family pictures. She was always standing slightly apart from our parents, and in recent photos she looked genuinely frightened. I drove to an electronics store and bought 3 prepaid phones with cash using my new identity documents. That evening, I created a new social media account under the name Tom Carter and sent Emma a private message. "If you're really looking for your brother, call this number after midnight when you're alone." I included the number for one of the prepaid phones. At 12:30 that night, my phone rang. "Leonard." Emma's voice was barely a whisper, and she sounded like she was crying. "Emma, oh my God, it's really you?" I said, feeling 7 years of suppressed emotion flooding back. "I've been trying to reach you for so long. Are you okay?" "I'm not okay," she sobbed. "Leonard, they've been monitoring my phone, my computer, everything. They told me you were dead. They made me go to your funeral and throw dirt on an empty coffin. But I never believed it because I knew you wouldn't leave me." Emma listened carefully. "I'm not dead, but I need you to understand how dangerous our parents are. They've been committing serious crimes using my identity, and they're planning to do the same thing to you." Emma was quiet for a long moment. "Leonard, I haven't been allowed to get a job or go to college or even hang out with friends without supervision since you left. They told everyone I was traumatized by your death and needed to be protected. But really, they just want to control me completely." "How old are you now, Emma?" "I'm 23. I should have been able to leave years ago, but they convinced me I had nowhere to go and no way to support myself. They control all my identification documents, my social security card, everything. I don't even have access to my own bank account." My anger toward my parents intensified as I realized they had been holding Emma prisoner for 7 years while using her trauma as another sympathy-generating story for their community image. "Emma, I'm going to get you out of there." I promised. But I need you to be very careful. Don't change your behavior at all. Keep posting those coded messages so I know you're safe. In exactly 1 week, I'm going to come get you, and we're going to disappear together. Leonard, what if they catch us? What if they call the police and say you're kidnapping me? Then we'll deal with that when it happens. Emma, you're an adult being held against your will by people who fake deaths for money. We have more legal standing than they do. Okay, Emma whispered. Leonard, I saved everything. Every birthday card you sent before they started returning them. Every Christmas gift. I hid them in a box under my mattress and I read your letters whenever I missed you. That night, I cried for the first time since discovering the insurance fraud. My little sister had been suffering alone for 7 years, believing I was dead while secretly treasuring the gifts I had sent her. She had been a prisoner in her own family, while I had been building a new life 3 hours away. But in 1 week, both of us were going to be free. At least that was the plan. I spent 6 days meticulously planning Emma's extraction like a military operation. Through our midnight phone conversations, I learned that my parents had installed monitoring software on all her devices and required her to check in with them every 2 hours when she wasn't home. She was allowed to work part-time at a local bookstore, but only during hours when my mother could drop her off and pick her up. The plan was simple but required perfect timing. On Friday afternoon, Emma would fake a panic attack at work, severe enough to require medical attention, but not serious enough to warrant hospitalization. I would arrive at the bookstore, posing as a private ambulance driver, transport her to a predetermined location, and we would immediately drive to Portland, where I had already established our new identities. I bought EMT uniforms online, rented an older white van, and created fake medical transport credentials that would pass casual inspection. Emma's job was to gradually move her important belongings and any sentimental items to a storage locker near her workplace so we could retrieve them during the fake emergency. Thursday night, Emma called me from the storage room of the bookstore during her shift. Leonard, I'm scared, she whispered. Something feels different at home. Mom and Dad have been asking weird questions about my work schedule and whether I've made any new friends. They keep looking at me like they're suspicious. It's probably just nerves, I said, though I felt uneasy myself. Tomorrow at 2 o'clock, follow the plan exactly. Have your manager call 911, then call the number I gave you for the private transport service. I'll be there in 15 minutes. What if something goes wrong? Then we improvise. Emma, no matter what happens, remember that you're not their prisoner anymore. You're a 23-year-old woman who deserves to make her own choices about her life. Friday morning, I put on the EMT uniform, loaded the van with basic medical supplies to make it look authentic, and drove to a parking lot 6 blocks from Emma's bookstore. At exactly 1:55, my prepaid phone rang. Shh. This is Tom from Med Transport Services. I answered using the fake business name I had created. We have a young woman experiencing severe anxiety and panic symptoms, said a voice I assumed was Emma's manager. She's requesting private transport to avoid the cost of a traditional ambulance. I'll be there in 10 minutes. I said, my heart pounding with excitement and nervousness. But when I turned onto the street where the bookstore was located, I saw 3 police cars parked outside the building with their lights flashing. My blood turned cold as I realized something had gone terribly wrong. I parked 2 blocks away and called Emma's phone, but it went straight to voicemail. I called the bookstore's main number, and the manager told me that the young woman in question had been picked up by her family and that medical transport was no longer needed. 20 minutes later, I was sitting in my van trying to figure out what to do next when my phone rang. Emma's number appeared on the screen, but when I answered, my mother's voice came through instead. Hello, Leonard. Patricia Romano said, her tone dripping with fake sweetness. Yes, that's right. We know exactly who you are and what you've been trying to do. Where's Emma? I demanded. Emma is safe at home with her family where she belongs, my mother replied. Unlike you, she understands the importance of family loyalty. Did you really think you could manipulate a traumatized young woman into running away with a stranger? I'm not a stranger. I'm her brother. No, Leonard. You're a disturbed individual who has been stalking and harassing our family for years. We have documentation of every unwanted contact you've made, every inappropriate gift you've sent, every boundary you've violated. We've been building a case against you, and today you finally crossed the line into attempted kidnapping. My mother's words hit me like physical blows as I realized the scope of their trap. They had been monitoring Emma's communications all along, probably since the day I left 7 years ago. They knew about our phone calls, our plan, everything. The police are very interested in talking with you, my mother continued, especially since you've been impersonating medical personnel and attempting to abduct a young woman who's been through enough trauma already. Emma never wanted to see you, Leonard. She's been terrified of you for years. That's not true, I said, but doubt was creeping into my voice. Check your phone, my mother said. Emma has something she wants to say to you. A text message appeared from Emma's number. Leonard, please stop trying to contact me. You're scaring me and making my anxiety worse. I don't want to see you ever again. Please, leave our family alone. Emma wrote that herself, my mother said clearly, listening to my reaction. She's been pretending to go along with your delusions because she was afraid of what you might do if she rejected you directly. But she doesn't want to be rescued, Leonard. She wants to be protected from you. I hung up the phone and sat in stunned silence, trying to process what had happened. Had Emma been playing me the entire time? Were the coded messages and midnight phone calls part of an elaborate setup to gather evidence against me? My second prepaid phone rang. This time my father's voice came through. Leonard, this is Vincent Romano. I'm calling to inform you that we've filed a formal restraining order against you, and we've provided the police with evidence of your stalking behavior dating back 7 years. If you attempt to contact any member of our family again, you will be arrested. You're the criminals, I said, my voice shaking with rage and desperation. You've been committing identity theft and insurance fraud using my name. We've been honoring the memory of our deceased son, my father replied calmly. Any business activities we've undertaken have been thoroughly documented and legally approved. You, on the other hand, have been impersonating our dead son and terrorizing our surviving daughter. I can prove I'm Leonard Romano. No, you can't. Leonard Romano died in a car accident in Switzerland 3 years ago. We have death certificates, insurance settlements, and community sympathy to prove it. You're just someone who became obsessed with our family's tragic story and decided to torment us by pretending to be our lost son. I realized with growing horror that my parents had constructed the perfect trap. From their perspective, and anyone else's, I was an unhinged stranger who had been stalking a grieving family for years. All my attempts to reconnect looked like harassment. All my gifts looked like disturbing obsession. All my efforts to prove my identity looked like elaborate delusion. And now I had attempted to kidnap their daughter using fake medical credentials and fraudulent identification documents. My third phone rang with a call from an unknown number. Is this the individual who was attempting to transport Emma Romano this afternoon? The voice was professional and authoritative. Who is this? This is Detective Sarah Martinez with the Denver Police Department. We'd like to speak with you about some concerning activities that have been reported by the Romano family. Can you come to the station voluntarily, or do we need to issue a warrant? I hung up the phone, started the van, and drove straight to my hotel. Within an hour, I had packed everything I owned into 2 suitcases and was driving toward Portland at 80 miles per hour. But I couldn't shake the image of Emma's face in the bookstore window as the police cars arrived. She had looked terrified, but whether she was afraid of me or of them, I no longer knew. 3 days later, I was sitting in a cheap motel room outside Portland staring at a Denver Post article about my failed rescue attempt. The headline read, "Local family terrorized by stalker claiming to be dead son." The article featured quotes from my parents describing their ongoing nightmare of being harassed by someone pretending to be their deceased child. My father was quoted as saying, "This person has been tormenting our family for years, sending inappropriate gifts and making disturbing phone calls. We've tried to handle it privately because we didn't want to relive our grief publicly, but when he attempted to abduct our daughter, we had no choice but to involve law enforcement." The article included a photo of my fake grave marker and mentioned the community's support for a family dealing with both tragic loss and ongoing harassment. Local business owners were quoted expressing sympathy and outrage about the situation. I had officially become the villain in my own story. My phone rang with a call from a Colorado number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, assuming it was law enforcement trying to trace my location, but desperation made me pick up. Tom Carter. The voice was familiar, but I couldn't place it immediately. Who is this? It's Marcus Hoffman, the private investigator you hired. I've been trying to reach you for 3 days. We need to talk immediately. I can't come back to Colorado, I said. There's a warrant out for my arrest. I know, and I'm partly responsible for that. Marcus paused, and I could hear traffic noise in the background. Tom, I haven't been completely honest with you about my relationship with your family. My stomach dropped. What do you mean? Your parents approached me 6 months before you did. They hired me to monitor your activities and provide them with intelligence about your plans and movements. They've been paying me $5,000 a month to keep tabs on you. I felt like the ground was falling out from under me. You've been working for them this whole time. Initially, yes, they told me you were a disturbed individual who was stalking their family and they needed protection. But as I started investigating, I realized they were the ones committing crimes, not you. When you hired me, I saw an opportunity to gather evidence against them while they thought I was still on their payroll. So everything you showed me was real. Everything was real, and I have much more evidence than what I shared with you. Tom, your parents have been playing a much deeper game than either of us realized. They've been planning to destroy you legally while continuing to profit from your identity indefinitely. Marcus explained that after my failed rescue attempt, my parents had contacted him to request additional services. They wanted him to help them track my location and provide evidence that could be used to prosecute me for stalking harassment and attempted kidnapping. But instead of helping them find you, I've been documenting their criminal activities and building a comprehensive case, Marcus said. Tom, they're not just guilty of identity theft and insurance fraud. They've been running a sophisticated criminal enterprise that involves multiple fake deaths, dozens of fraudulent insurance claims, and a network of accomplices across 3 states. What do you mean multiple fake deaths? Your parents have been perfecting this system for decades. Your father's brother supposedly died in a fishing accident in Alaska 15 years ago, but he's actually living in Phoenix under a different name while your parents collect on his life insurance. Your mother's sister allegedly died of cancer 8 years ago, but she's running a catering business in New Mexico, while your parents receive sympathy donations and insurance payouts in her memory. The scope of my family's criminal activities was far beyond anything I had imagined. They weren't just dysfunctional people who had made bad choices. They were career criminals who specialized in faking family deaths for financial gain. They've been using the same playbook with you that they've used successfully for years, Marcus continued. Create a fake death, collect insurance money, exploit the identity for business purposes, and silence anyone who tries to interfere by painting them as dangerous stalkers. What about Emma? Emma is their next target. They're planning to fake her death on her 25th birthday to maximize insurance payouts. But they needed to neutralize you first because you were the biggest threat to their operation. Marcus had recordings of my parents discussing their long-term plans, including strategies for maintaining their fake grief performance, while expanding their identity theft operations to include other family members. They've been documenting your attempts to contact them for years, but not because they were afraid of you, Marcus said. They were building evidence they could use to discredit you if you ever discovered their crimes and tried to expose them. So Emma was never trying to contact me. Emma has been trying to contact you for years, but your parents have been intercepting and controlling all her communications. The coded messages in her social media posts were real, but when you responded, they were monitoring everything and planning their trap. Marcus had video evidence of my parents coaching Emma on what to say during our phone conversations, recordings of them celebrating the success of their setup, and documentation of their plan to use the failed rescue attempt as justification for having me arrested and permanently silenced. But here's what they don't know, Marcus said. I've been wearing a wire during every meeting with them for the past 4 months. I have recorded confessions of insurance fraud, identity theft, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice. I have enough evidence to put them in federal prison for the rest of their lives. Why are you helping me now? What changed? Tom, I became a private investigator to help people find the truth and get justice. Your parents hired me to help them destroy their own son to cover up their crimes. That's not something I can live with regardless of how much they're paying me. Marcus had copies of financial records showing the full scope of my parents' criminal network, including bank accounts in multiple states, real estate purchased with fraudulent insurance money, and business investments made using stolen identities. We can take them down completely, Marcus said, but it has to be done carefully and all at once. If they suspect what's coming, they'll disappear with millions of dollars and leave you holding the bag for attempted kidnapping. For the first time in weeks, I felt something resembling hope. What do you need me to do? Come back to Colorado. Turn yourself into the police voluntarily with me and a federal attorney present. We'll provide them with evidence that you're the victim of an elaborate fraud scheme, not the perpetrator of stalking crimes. What if they don't believe the evidence? They will. Tom, your parents made one crucial mistake. They've been so confident in their system that they've documented everything. They have files detailing every step of their criminal activities because they were planning to use your case as a template for future operations. Marcus had discovered that my parents were consulting with other families about how to fake deaths for insurance money and identity theft purposes. They had turned destroying their own children into a business model they were selling to other criminal families. We're not just going to get justice for you, Marcus said. We're going to shut down an entire criminal network that's been destroying families for decades. That night, I bought a plane ticket back to Denver under my Thomas Mitchell Carter identity. I was about to walk into the biggest fight of my life, but for the first time in 7 years, I wasn't fighting alone. I met Marcus and federal attorney Sarah Chen at the Denver FBI field office on a cold Tuesday morning in November. Special Agent Jennifer Walsh led the meeting, and her team had been investigating insurance fraud networks across the western United States for the past 3 years. Mr. Carter, based on the evidence Mr. Hoffman has provided, your family appears to be at the center of one of the most sophisticated identity theft and insurance fraud operations we've encountered, Agent Walsh explained. We've been tracking suspicious patterns in life insurance claims across Colorado, New Mexico, and Arizona, and your case provides the missing connections we needed to understand the full scope of their activities. Sarah Chen had reviewed the local stalking charges against me and determined they would be dropped immediately once federal authorities arrested my parents. The Denver Police Department has been very cooperative, she said. They're as disturbed as anyone to learn that they were manipulated into investigating a victim instead of the actual criminals. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Federal agents would simultaneously raid all 3 Romano restaurant locations, my parents' home, my uncle's supposed gravesite in Phoenix, my aunt's catering business in Albuquerque, and the homes of 4 other families Marcus had identified as part of the criminal network. We'll execute all warrants at exactly 6 in the morning, Agent Walsh said. By noon, Your parents and their accomplices will be in federal custody. Their assets will be frozen, and your identity will be fully restored. At 5:30 that morning, I sat in an FBI surveillance van parked 3 blocks from my childhood home, watching through monitors as teams of agents prepared to end 7 years of systematic fraud and abuse. At exactly 6 o'clock, everything happened simultaneously. Federal agents in tactical gear surrounded Romano's Italian kitchen on Colfax Avenue, while customers were arriving for breakfast. My father was handcuffed in the kitchen while my mother was arrested at the front register, both of them shouting about their rights and demanding to call their lawyer. Simultaneously, agents raided the house where I had grown up, recovering boxes of fake documents, insurance files, and detailed records of their criminal activities. Emma was escorted safely from the house and taken to a secure location for her own protection and debriefing. The news crews that Agent Walsh had strategically alerted arrived just as my parents were being loaded into federal transport vehicles. The footage of Vincent and Patricia Romano doing a perp walk in handcuffs while shocked restaurant customers watched from the sidewalk was broadcast on every Denver news channel by 7 that morning. But the most satisfying moment came when agents arrived at Riverside Cemetery and began excavating my supposed gravesite. The empty coffin that was pulled from the ground contained nothing but sandbags and a few pieces of old jewelry that my parents had buried to make the grave seem authentic. By 10 that morning, Agent Walsh called to inform me that they had arrested 9 people across 3 states and recovered evidence of insurance fraud totaling over $6 million. My parents were being charged with 17 felony counts each, including identity theft, insurance fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy. "Mr. Carter, we've also located your sister Emma," Agent Walsh said. "She's been very cooperative and has provided additional evidence about her captivity and the plans your parents had for faking her death next year." Emma and I were reunited that afternoon at the FBI field office. The moment I saw her, 7 years of grief and rage dissolved into overwhelming relief. She looked thin and fragile, but she was alive and free for the first time since she was 16 years old. "Leonard, I tried so hard to get messages to you." She sobbed as we hugged. "They were monitoring everything, but I never stopped believing you would find me eventually." Emma explained that our parents had been planning her fake death for her 25th birthday, which was just 4 months away. They had already prepared fake travel documents showing she would be killed in a hiking accident while vacationing in Montana, and they had taken out life insurance policies worth $800,000. "They told me if I ever tried to contact you or escape, they would have you arrested for kidnapping," Emma said. "They showed me fake evidence that you had become dangerous and unstable, and they said the only way to keep you from getting hurt was to make you believe I didn't want to see you." The federal investigation revealed that my parents had been operating their criminal network for over 20 years. In addition to faking deaths within their own family, they had been consulting with other families who wanted to collect insurance money and eliminate problematic family members. They had detailed files on dozens of families across the country, along with template documents for creating fake deaths, forged international documentation, and strategies for maintaining long-term fraud without detection. Marcus had recorded confessions where my parents bragged about their system's sophistication and their plans to expand into other types of identity crime. They were particularly proud of the psychological manipulation tactics they used to maintain control over their victims and silence potential witnesses. "Your parents saw themselves as criminal innovators," Agent Walsh explained. "They were planning to write a book about their methods once they retired and moved to a non-extradition country." The court hearing 3 weeks later was both devastating and cathartic. I sat in the gallery with Emma holding her hand as federal prosecutors laid out the full scope of our parents' crimes. The evidence was overwhelming: financial records, recorded confessions, fake documents, testimony from dozens of victims, and photographic evidence of their elaborate deceptions. When I was called to give my victim impact statement, I looked directly at my parents for the first time in 7 years. Vincent Romano looked smaller and more pathetic than I remembered. Patricia Romano refused to make eye contact, staring at the floor throughout the entire proceeding. Your Honor, for 7 years, I believed that my family simply didn't love me anymore, I said. I thought I had somehow disappointed them so profoundly that they chose to erase me from their lives. But the truth is far worse. My parents turned destroying their own children into a profit center. They didn't just break my heart, they commodified my pain and exploited my love for their own financial gain. The judge sentenced both my parents to 18 years in federal prison, with no possibility of parole, for the first 10 years. My uncle and aunt received 12-year sentences for their participation in the conspiracy. The other family members who had helped facilitate the fraud received sentences ranging from 3 to 8 years. As the judge read the sentences, I felt a profound sense of justice being served. But more importantly, I felt free for the first time since I was 25 years old. Emma and I walked out of that courthouse together, ready to build the family we should have had all along. 6 months after the trials, Emma and I were sitting on the back deck of our new house in Portland, Oregon, watching the sunset over the mountains and planning our nonprofit organization's first annual conference. The Invisible Victims Foundation had grown faster than we ever imagined possible, with over 300 families reaching out for help in our first year of operation. Emma had legally changed her name to Emma Carter, choosing to share my new identity as a symbol of our partnership and our commitment to building a chosen family based on love rather than obligation. She was thriving in college, studying social work, with the goal of becoming a licensed therapist who specialized in family abuse recovery. "Leonard, I got another email from a family in Texas," Emma said, reading from her laptop. "The parents faked their oldest son's death 5 years ago to collect insurance money, and now they're planning to do the same thing to their daughter. She found our website and wants to know if we can help her escape before her fake funeral." Over the past year, we had helped families in 18 states escape similar situations. Our foundation provided legal resources, safe housing identity recovery services, and emotional support for people whose own families had turned them into victims of financial fraud and psychological abuse. The most rewarding cases were the ones where we could intervene before fake deaths were implemented. We had developed a network of attorneys, private investigators, and federal agents who could move quickly when families tried to replicate my parents' criminal model. "We're going to need more funding if we want to expand to handle national cases," I said, reviewing our budget projections. "Actually, I have some good news about that," Emma smiled. "Jennifer Walsh called yesterday. The federal government is planning to award our foundation a $2 million grant to develop a training program for law enforcement agencies. Apparently, family identity theft is much more common than anyone realized, and they want us to help other investigators recognize the warning signs." Jennifer Walsh had become more than just the federal agent who solved our case. She had become a close friend and eventual romantic partner who understood the unique challenges of recovering from family betrayal. Our relationship had grown slowly and carefully built on mutual respect and shared commitment to helping other victims. The three of us had plans to get married next spring, with Emma walking both of us down the aisle in a ceremony that would celebrate chosen family over biological obligation. "I still can't believe how many people are dealing with variations of what we went through," Emma said. "Yesterday, I talked to a woman whose family faked her brother's military death to collect veterans' benefits. Last week, it was a man whose parents staged his sister's cancer death to get donations from their church community. The work was emotionally challenging, but it gave both of us a sense of purpose that we had never experienced before. Every family we helped escape felt like a small victory against the system that had nearly destroyed us." Our foundation had also lobbied successfully for stronger federal laws regarding family identity theft and insurance fraud. The Leonard Romano Act required insurance companies to verify deaths with multiple independent sources and created harsher penalties for family members who participated in fake death schemes. Emma, do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't found those email threads? I asked. I think about that all the time, she replied. I would probably be dead by now. Really dead, not just legally dead, and you would still be sending birthday cards to people who were planning to kill me. The realization that my parents had been preparing to murder Emma for insurance money still haunted both of us. Federal investigators had found detailed plans for staging her hiking accident, including GPS coordinates for a remote canyon where her body would never be found. But Leonard, I also think about how many other families are still trapped in situations like ours, Emma continued. Every time we help someone escape, I remember that feeling of being completely alone and thinking no one would ever believe my story. That was why our foundation's motto was Chosen Family, Chosen Freedom. We specialized in helping people understand that family relationships should be based on love, respect, and mutual support, not control, manipulation, and financial exploitation. Our story had been featured in documentaries, news articles, and true crime podcasts, but we always emphasized that our experience wasn't unique. Family abuse disguised as loyalty was more common than most people wanted to acknowledge. I want to read you something, I said, pulling out a letter that had arrived that morning. This is from a young man in Michigan whose family is pressuring him to fake his own death so they can collect life insurance and avoid paying his student loans. The letter described a family situation that was eerily similar to ours, complete with emotional manipulation, financial control, and threats of abandonment if the victim didn't comply with the criminal plan. Dear Leonard and Emma, I read aloud, I found your website after Googling, "My family wants me to die for money" at 3 a.m. I thought I was crazy until I read your story and realized that other families actually do this to their own children. You saved my life by showing me that I'm not obligated to destroy myself just because my parents demand it. I'm planning to contact the FBI tomorrow and then disappear using your foundation's resources. Thank you for proving that love shouldn't hurt and family shouldn't be a prison. Letters like that one arrived every week, reminding us that our work was making a real difference in people's lives. As the sun finished setting, Emma and I reviewed our plans for the foundation's second year. We were opening regional offices in 5 states, hiring additional counselors and attorneys, and launching a scholarship program for young adults who had been financially abused by their families. Leonard, can I ask you something? Emma said as we prepared to go inside. Of course. Do you ever forgive them? Do you ever think about mom and dad in prison and feel sorry for them? I considered her question carefully. I feel sorry for the people they could have been if they had chosen love over greed. I feel sorry for the family we could have had if they had valued relationships over money. But I don't forgive the choices they made or the pain they caused. I think about writing to them sometimes, Emma said, just to let them know that we're happy and successful despite everything they did to us. But then I remember that they would probably try to find a way to exploit our success somehow. That was the most important lesson we had learned. Toxic people don't change. Just because you forgive them, and family members who see you as a resource to be exploited will never see you as a person to be loved. Our foundation's success had also taught us that recovery from family betrayal was possible, but it required building new support systems based on mutual respect and genuine care. Emma, what advice would you give to someone who's just starting to realize their family is abusing them? I asked. I'd tell them that their family's treatment of them says nothing about their worth as a person, she replied. And I'd tell them that choosing to protect themselves isn't selfish or disloyal. It's necessary and brave. That was the message we tried to share with every person who contacted our foundation. You are not responsible for fixing people who are committed to hurting you, even if those people are your family members. As we walked into our house that evening, I looked around at the photos on our walls. Pictures of Emma's college graduation, my wedding to Jennifer Foundation events, where we had helped families reunite safely, and holidays celebrated with friends who had become our chosen family. None of the photos included my biological parents, but that absence felt like freedom rather than loss. The phone rang as we were making dinner, and Emma answered with her usual greeting. Invisible Victims Foundation, this is Emma. How can we help you tonight? I listened to her calm, compassionate voice as she talked someone through the process of recognizing financial abuse and planning a safe escape from family exploitation. Her ability to turn our trauma into help for others was the most beautiful thing to come out of our terrible experience. After she hung up, Emma smiled at me. That was a 17-year-old girl in Florida. Her parents are planning to fake her death next month so they can collect insurance money and avoid paying for her college. She wants our help disappearing before they can go through with it. Add her to tomorrow's case list, I said. We'll start working on her extraction plan first thing in the morning. As we finished making dinner together, I reflected on how dramatically our lives had changed in just 2 years. We had gone from being victims of an elaborate criminal conspiracy to being advocates who helped other families escape similar situations. But the most important change was that we had learned to build relationships based on trust, honesty, and mutual support. The family we created for ourselves was stronger and more loving than anything we had experienced with our biological parents. That night, as I was preparing for bed, I thought about a question I wanted to ask anyone who might be listening to our story. Have you ever felt like your family's love came with conditions that required you to sacrifice your own well-being? Have you ever wondered if the people who raised you actually see you as a person worth loving or just as a resource to be used for their benefit? If those questions resonate with you, please know that you're not alone. And you're not crazy for questioning family relationships that feel more like business transactions than expressions of love. You deserve relationships that make you feel supported, respected, and valued for who you are, not for what you can provide. Thank you for listening to our story and for supporting the work we're doing to help other families heal from similar experiences. If you found this story helpful or inspiring, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to see more stories of survival and recovery, share it with anyone who might benefit from hearing it, and leave a comment sharing your own thoughts about family relationships and chosen family. Remember that healing is possible, freedom is worth fighting for, and you deserve to be loved unconditionally by people who celebrate your happiness rather than exploit your loyalty. Sleep well. And remember that tomorrow is always an opportunity to build the life and relationships you truly deserve.